Let's talk about New York City. We got this from the Daily Mail. NYC has worst unemployment rate in the U.S. at 7.6 because Manhattan workers and international tourists still haven't returned to crime-ridden city post-COVID.
I don't think it's the crime. I think it's the expense. I mean, if you have a business most people don't like change. Most companies don't like change. So if you have a company that's massively profitable, why would you want to switch your entire management style and take a giant risk by having everybody work from home? But if your arm is twisted and you have no choice, it's either A, you go out of business, or B, you figure out how to make people work from home. You'll figure out how to make people work from home. And then once you figure out how to make everybody work from home, now you can say, you know what? Instead of paying $300,000 a month in rent for the entire floor of this office, what if we just paid 10 for a satellite office? You're saving $290,000 a month, and if that's the case, why are you going to have everybody return? What's the point? Like I've walked home several times from my old apartment in Bed-Stuy from Manhattan on 27th Street. I didn't. Maybe it's just that because I'm used to it, or I grew up there, or I'm missing something. But I haven't felt any fear of crime on my walk home, more than at least what I've ever felt.
Right.
But it's just all these places, all these office buildings, all these stores, they all say for rent. I think that's the reason. It's just if the office workers haven't returned, if the businesses haven't returned, then there's going to be less work for people.
Think about this too. If you're a business based in New York, let's say you're like BuzzFeed, right? And all you really do is you have people sit around writing articles about stupid garbage. But they could write those garbage articles anywhere.
Yeah.
Now, cost of living in New York is high. It's very high. I think it's the highest in the country, right?
I think so.
Yeah. It goes up every year.
Goes up every year. And plus, New York City has the highest income taxes. So New York State plus city taxes makes your income tax the highest. California as a state has the highest, but I think New York City having like a 3%
It's
city.
like 3 or 3.5% for city, 6 or 6.5% for state,
Yeah.
and it goes. I think it's slightly lower if you make less, but that's approximately what it is. I don't even think it's the tax that does it. I think it's just the sheer not having to come back to work.
No. The point I'm making, what I'm pointing out with the taxes is that the cost of living is high. The average person needs to make like six figures to have a middle class life. I think in New York State it's like 150 to 175K you need to make to be considered middle class because of the cost of living being so high. Like $3,000 on average for rent. I think it's gone up to like $4,000. So you're BuzzFeed and you're like, if I want to hire someone in New York to come in the office and write about, Brad Pitt's junk or whatever, I got to spend 175K for mid-tier talent. Okay, well, in rural, upstate or even in like central PA, where the cost of living is low, they can do the same work. We can do virtual meetings. You can metaverse or whatever. We can pay him 60. All right, hire the guy in PA. So now the dude who's sitting in New York, whose talent tree includes writing about Brad Pitt's junk, is sitting there being like, I can't get a job anywhere.
Do you think that California making it, I think that what they did was made it illegal to have people not be employees, but to be contractors for writers and vloggers. You think that was a good or a bad move?
Bad move. It wiped out so much of their digital industry. It's laughably bad. It was the unions that pushed for this bill. Did you hear about this in California?
I haven't.
So this was, I think, like 2 years ago
Yeah,
or
it's been
more
a while
longer.
now.
The unions pushed for this bill that said companies can't hire contractors for a certain amount of tasks. And so this would result in like Uber having to hire people. I think Uber may have got an amendment that defeated it or something. But it meant that if you were a writer, a freelance writer, you could only write like 30 articles per year or something like that. It was like month.
Yeah, it was a
Per
really
month.
low amount per month.
Yeah, so like the average person might write like 5 or 6 articles per day. Now you can only do 30. Well, the company, the California company just says, okay, your contract's terminated. There's a guy in Arizona who can write the same thing for me, and he can work all day every day because Arizona doesn't have those laws. Or actually what it was is companies in New York fired all of their California contractors and freelancers. Just overnight, all these, it was like SB Nation, a Vox company, like terminated all of their California freelancers.
Yeah, it just doesn't synergize with the COVID narrative of work from home.
Well, this was before COVID.
Yeah.
It was before COVID.
I wonder if it was like a prep for this kind of contingency.
I don't know, man.
The working from home thing changed my life. I used to work always on location, and then in 2010 I started working with Minds, and we just kind of worked from our laptops from a Starbucks or wherever. And man, the commute is really draining. I don't know. You say you take your electric bike to work now. That might be kind of refreshing. 20 minutes.
It's
on an
fun,
electric
but
bike.
still, even if I didn't actually have to make that 20 or 30 minute trip, why would I?
Exactly.
And especially if I could pay $1,000 in rent instead of $12,000 in rent, then why would I not do that? I think a lot of this is driven by economics more than it is by crime.
So, but you have a physical location in New York City, right?
Unfortunately.
So people have to physically walk in and hand you something to fix. So you can't. I mean, you could theoretically do the remote if you bought something in the middle of nowhere and said, "Ship me your phone and I'll fix it."
Yeah, but that would still require the employees to commute to that location and do the job.
Yeah.
I just mean for like New York City, like your job requires you to be a service on the ground in New York City for people of New York City. Some things we're not going to be able to, automate or remote or whatever.
Some things are never going to really be fully remote, but a lot of stuff is.
Does this, has it forced you to spend more money, or I'm sorry, charge more money for your services in New York City? Like the fact that industry, all these buildings are shut down, less people are working, unemployment's very, very high. You having to have a physical brick and mortar location, I'd assume costs are going up, right?
My costs all of my prices went up in 2012 when I opened a real store rather than just, work out of the park or anything like that. I haven't raised my prices anymore now because when people lose their jobs and everything else costs more money, they tend to not want to spend more money on their repairs. If your grocery bill is twice as much and you just lost your job from COVID, you're probably not. If anything, people were asking for discounts nonstop in 2020 and early 2021.
But have your costs gone up now in the past couple of years with the pandemic?
My costs haven't gone up as a business. They went up not because of what happened, but because I moved in 2019 at pretty much the worst possible time. I almost tripled my rent at the worst possible time because business was doing this. And then literally I move and then it's like...
But food prices are up as well. I mean, food and gas and everything is up. That's got to have an impact on your business, right?
Personal, yes. For the business, not really.
I just feel like in the long run from this, all of it points towards certain things are going to become more expensive. Certain things are going to become cheaper. Things that have to be physical will probably get more expensive, and things that don't have to be will probably get cheaper.
I don't see how rent can get any more expensive in New York City, but it continues to.
I know. Is it going to get to a point where they're like, hey, no one lives here anymore. Let's just drop the rent back down to
I don't believe any.
$1,000 a month.
I don't think anything there is supposed to be rented. Like this started as I didn't even intend for this to be like a real video series. I just was looking for a new store in 2019, and I was so aggravated that every time I'd see a place they lied about, I said, I'm going to buy one of those little laser measurers, and I'm going to record the next time.
What did they lie about?
Well, they would say it was 1,800 square feet. I would show up and it would be 800. And then I would I have my camera and I go, okay, so this says 800. You said 1,800. Why? And that video series was probably the most successful thing I've ever done on YouTube. Like 99% of my channel probably doesn't even know that I fix MacBooks. They just see me as the real estate person because of that. But a lot of these places, they would say, if you don't rent it, it will be rented next week. We have all these clients lined up. And then I'll show up a year or 2 or 3 years later and it's all empty. And so why don't you lower the price like a little bit? You have spaces that are the size of my store, which was $12,500 when I first rented it. That were going for $75,000 a month, and it's the same size as my location, just 2 blocks this way. And they still won't be rented 3 or 4 or 5 years later. And more of the city looks like this, and the prices never go down with anything. The office, the office prices stay like that, and they stay empty. So this was happening before COVID. Like the fact there was just something needed to happen to kind of prick this little bubble.
So has it gotten better, or it's still getting worse, or what?
No, I mean, I still walk by these places every day.
Are they owned by megacorps that are writing off the losses on their taxes or something?
I have no idea. The best thing...
I'll tell you... No, go ahead.
The best thing that I can imagine was one gentleman I'll quote on Reddit, Laminar Flow, who was saying that a lot of these properties, let's say the mortgage will be owned by a bunch of investors as a commercial mortgage-backed security. And I'm probably misphrasing this because I read it a year and a half ago. But you can't simply if you lower the rents in the property, the value of it goes down. If the value of it goes down, well, your collateral is the actual building, which means that the owner of the property would have to give up that amount of money, or it just
Well, no, that'd be a great
default
thing.
on the mortgage.
You'd write off your losses. You could save money on taxes by doing that.
No, you can't. If you actually advertise the space at a lower rent, it winds up meaning that the building is worth less. And if the building is worth less, then your own. No, but if you have a mortgage on it, your collateral is the building. So let's say the building is worth $3 million. Now it's worth $2 million. Well, you as the building owner need to give the bank $1 million in collateral in cash or in something else.
I don't think that's true. I mean, I have mortgages and stuff.
I did read this on Reddit.
And I do think it is possible for mortgages to call in if the value of the house drops too low and the bank panics. But I'm not sure exactly how that works.
I don't know how it works with commercial mortgage-backed securities. Yeah. It was the closest thing that sounded like it made any sense, but I can't pretend I know.
I think what might be happening right now is prices, because demand is low, prices actually are dropping. But the reason you see the rent staying, going up is because inflation is actually outpacing the rate at which the building should be decreasing in value based on supply and demand. You know what I mean?
Yeah, well, a lot of these spaces are still going for $100 to $500 a square foot.
Yeah.
And it's like that doesn't make sense. That didn't even make sense before COVID, because before COVID, these spaces were all empty. So after COVID, if people have left, then it definitely doesn't make sense.
Well, before COVID, it's just New York prime real estate. You're going to hold on to it because it's valuable. During COVID, everything was, decreasing in value, but inflation was actually getting really, really bad. And it's been consistently bad every month. For the past, 6 months, every month it's like inflation is at a record. Inflation is at a new record. It's like inflation hasn't been this high since the 80s, and it's going up a little bit. if you actually do the calculation based on the 80s numbers, then inflation right now is actually the worst it's been since World War II. Then you also see the accusations. I think it might have been Thomas Massie who said this. Nancy Pelosi included a 21% congressional budget increase. Either that means she's giving everybody like a big raise during a crisis, or to cover the cost of inflation for their congressional budgets, they just did a 21% increase, which says a whole lot about what inflation might actually be. So if the actual demand for these places is non-existent or gone down dramatically, then it should go from $100 a square foot to maybe $30 a square foot, right? Then inflation hits and it spikes right back up because it's New York and things are just getting crummy.
Even if it was 20% inflation, if it went from 100 to 30, then it should only go up to, let's say, 36 or 38 or 40.
But I mean, like New York has a substantially higher cost of living. So going from 100 to 30 was just me being hyperbolic.
Yeah, I hear you.
If it goes from 100 to 85 and then it jumps up another 16, it goes back up to 100. So inflation, I mean, maybe I'm just speculating, to be completely honest. I honestly don't know where we're going to go from here, because I think, almost all work we're seeing now from most of the millennial generation and lower is just not real work. To be completely honest, what we're doing is work. Like we show up. I read the news all day, every day, so I know stuff and I read all this stuff. But man, it's kind of crazy to me that we sit in a room talking about things and it generates revenue.
Yeah.
And I can buy food with it. Man, I don't make bread. I don't farm anything.
That's wild.
There are people who work at BuzzFeed who, like I said, write about Brad Pitt's junk or whatever, and they make $60,000 a year. And that's crazy, because the dude loading the plane, I swear, I think we're very close to some kind of, Occupy style revolt or whatever. Maybe this will be a catalyst in the Civil War or something like that. That the people who load planes so that you can travel around get paid probably $15 an hour at this point. Yet the dude sitting in an office in New York with a finger up their nose, wondering like, how can I call Trump racist today, is getting paid $40 an hour. That is mind blowing to me. Something doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
Certainly, I think working class people are going to lose it and just be like, I am done with whatever this is. I mean, think about this. Let's say you work as at an airline. And I say this job because I did it, and we got paid $10 an hour back in like 2008. Let's say you're working that job and you're getting $15 an hour right now, or maybe even 20 still. And then you're doing this job and you look up in that plane and you're thinking to yourself like, truth be told, when you work for these companies, you get to fly for free. You have to pay the taxes on it, but you get non-rev flights, standby. But you're wondering like, what is that guy up there doing? That 25-year-old dude with those thick black frame glasses. What does he do for a living that he gets to fly on this trip to Nassau to go to the Bahamas, man? I wish I could do that. Here I am doing all of this hard back-breaking work, 50,000 pounds per day, loading these planes, and I don't make enough money to go on these vacations. And who's that guy? I wonder what his job is. Now, these guys are probably assuming, like, must be a tech guy, must be a finance guy. And then the dude up there with the black frame glasses is like, Brad Pitt's junk was seen in a movie today, and he's making all that money so he can fly to the Bahamas. Like, this system is broken, if you were to ask me.
Yeah, I have a feeling that the megacorps are coming to buy all the land, not all the land, but a lot of property, like BlackRock, State Street. They're going to buy up a bunch of property, and then there may be a revolt. An American revolt against the corporate landowners, because it's like, you may own it on paper, but if you're not there, you don't really have control of the property. They'll have private security, and then it's up to, is the American government going to support the corporations and the law that says that they own it, or are they going to support the people and the freedom against corporate monopoly? Because if you want to print $80 trillion and then give it to BlackRock to buy $80 trillion worth of property before inflation and then destroy the economy, BlackRock doesn't get to own that property.
You will own nothing and you will be happy.
Well, I suspect what's more likely to foment a revolution, because this infuriated me and I'm incredibly patient, was something like the Bloomberg opinion talking about ways to save money. Some of the things you can do are not treat your pet if they have cancer, take the bus, and eat lentils instead of meat.
Did it actually say not treat your pet if they have
Literally
cancer?
said that.
Well,
yeah.
pets are a luxury.
Insane.
Look, sooner or later, you all will realize you will own nothing and you'll be happy.
Yeah.
Oh, also, lentils are banging, by the way.
That's fine. Yeah, lentils are fine. I don't care about that.
Thanks for checking out this segment from the Timcast IRL podcast. But if you want to check out the full show live, tune in Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. And if you want more special access content, head over to timcast.com and become a member. Your membership helps sustain this company, keep our journalists employed, makes this show happen, and you will get access to exclusive members-only segments of the Timcast IRL podcast, and there's a massive library to check out. So again, go to timcast.com or tune in Monday through Friday at 8 p.m., and we'll see you all there.